You see, Norway has a long coastline, uh, and the Germans know this just as well as the British do, that the British dominate the North Sea. And while the Germans do have a presence, naval presence in the North Sea and the Skagerrak, they have a clear inferiority. Germans rely on iron imported from northern Sweden near Kiruna. Now, that iron ore is not transported through a train track line down to southern Sweden and then shipped across the Baltic Sea to Germany. Instead, it is shipped to Narvik, a port in Norway, and then transported to Germany. So, for that logistical reason, Norway is what permits Swedish iron ore to enter the German military economy to further build its planes and tanks and other um, belligerent machinery. So Norway was a problem, and yet Germany couldn't simply um, secure it. And as long as Sweden was sending in its iron ore, and there was no one stopping the iron ore leaving the port of Narvik in Norway, then Germany can trade with Sweden all it wants and receive the iron ore imports. And it was on good terms with both Sweden and Norway, and no one would prevent it. The British wanted to blockade that. The British wanted to prevent the Germans from receiving its iron ore. And a plan to do that? Well, direct intervention into Norway, into the northern port of Narvik, to secure that and to secure the iron ore mines in northern Sweden. So, intervention into Norway that would violate Norway's neutrality and diplomatic rights in order to prevent Swedish imports from entering Germany. They tried diplomatic methods, and those diplomatic methods failed. They were unable to convince either Norway or Sweden to end their imports to Germany. Keep in mind, both of those Scandinavian countries have very small militaries in land and in water. They're big trade countries. And so the British developed a plan for intervention, and it did not go off yet. There was no diplomatic reason that would encourage, that would get the British general public to support such a plan. Until the end of November 1939, something switched. The Soviet Union invaded Finland, and the whole world was against the Soviets. They were rooting on the Finns, and the British general public was fully in support and wanted to send as much aid as possible. Many volunteers, the largest number of which came from Sweden, largest number of which came from Denmark, assisted the Finns in its defense against the Soviet Union, which remained successful for many months. Now, in order to support Finland, as they would claim, the British government, the British Admiralty, suggested landing troops in northern Norway to march them across the north into northern Sweden and northern Finland the long way, instead of simply landing them up in a northern port like Petsamo, that they would land in Narvik and then march their way through 3 countries in order to reach the front lines and assist against the Russians. Either the front lines or somewhere in the back. But either way, it would involve going through both Norway and Sweden. Now, this gave a more legitimate political excuse to intervene in Norway directly. And keep in mind that neither governments of Sweden nor Norway appreciated this, and both asked the British government to stay out. And yet the British were intent on this intervention. Now, eventually, the Germans came to know of this, and they knew of how vital Swedish iron ore imports were to its war economy. And so they tried to prevent what the British were planning to do. They knew about this. And so they created another plan to intervene in Norway before the British could.